Good morning. Let's try it again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Excellent. That's the school teacher in me. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Christian Lebu. I'm the Executive Vice President of Campaign Strategy at M&R. Prior to this role, I had the privilege of working with many of the folks that are sitting here at this table as the Chief of Campaigns at NARAL Pro-Choice America. I'm so thrilled to be able to moderate this discussion today. I don't have to tell any of you that the attacks on the reproductive rights movement and truly our larger progressive movement as a whole is just coming at an onslaught. There is harmful state legislation. We are seeing eroding federal protections and endless litigation and lawsuits. But there is reason to hope, because there is always a reason to hope. And my hope is lying right here in the organizers that have joined us today. We are going to talk about creative solutions to revamp organizing and campaigns, ways to meet this moment to ensure that we are organizing towards true liberation and ensuring that we are marching towards reproductive freedom. A few notes before we get started, and I let the panelists introduce themselves. The folks at Netroots want me to remind everyone that we are staying masked in conference spaces and ensuring that you are masked when you are not actively eating and drinking. Please ensure you're also keeping the aisles and any marked accessibility spaces open and clear for the folks that need them. Okay, I am thrilled to introduce to you Yamalin Rivera, who is the Communications and Digital Organizing Director at Taller Salud, Tatiana Perkins, who is the Patient Advocacy Manager at Planned Parenthood Federation of America and Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Alicia Stallworth, who is the Southwest Campaigns Director of NARAL Pro-Choice America, and Sharmin Hussain, who is the Organizing Director of 18 Million Rising and was the Coalition Director of Liberate Abortion. All right, would folks like to introduce themselves? Yamalin, you want to start?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Coming straight from Puerto Rico, and I'm so glad to be part of this panel. And, through the talking that we're going to have, you're going to see that we're connected in so many ways, and how we were looking forward to, work ourselves to get the human rights that we need for every person in the States and also in PR.
Alicia.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Alicia Stallworth. My pronouns are she, her. I reside in Atlanta, Georgia. I am the Southeast Campaigns Director for NARAL Pro-Choice America. Prior to being at NARAL Pro-Choice America, I was the Georgia State Director at Planned Parenthood Southeast and Planned Parenthood Southeast Advocates. So I am really excited to see so many people who have been in this fight with us and some who just want to learn more. Please ask your questions, give us comments, follow us on the Netroots app. Super excited to be a part of this conversation with my comrades in this fight.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sharmin Hussain. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Bangladeshi queer Muslim organizer. I came from organizing against the Hindu right and the rise of the Muslim Orthodox community and the right-wing trends that we're seeing in my part of the world. I'm from Queens, get the money, New York, but I am so excited to be here. I feel like there's so much to be talked about as far as the ecosystem of work that we have to build. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. My name is Tatiana Perkins. I use she and her pronouns. I am a Black Native Latina organizer from Seattle, Washington, so I don't know what my parents did with that. I have been in the repro space for quite literally a decade now by way of teaching sex ed, and my journey has brought me along to be at the Planned Parenthood National Office, where I've been for the past 4 years, leading all of our national office storytelling work, getting to work with amazing advocates from all over the country, and I'm glad to be here, so thanks so much.
We will definitely leave time for questions at the end, but I'm going to take privilege of the moderator with the first question and ask each of you, what differences can you point to in your organizing work pre and post Dobbs? And what are some of the most creative pivots that you've seen in this moment? Who wants to go first?
I go.
Yeah.
Abortion is legal in Puerto Rico. Yes, all people have the right to decide and to have privacy. This includes making decisions about their bodies, their personal life, and their families. No person, not even the state, can inappropriately interfere with the privacy of a person. The Department of Justice of Puerto Rico maintained that the decision of the United States Supreme Court not to repeal the Roe versus Wade case, considering that the federal constitutional right to abortion no longer exists, does not alter the rule of law in force on the island regarding the practice of abortion. But we still have to fight. Last election, a new fundamentalist political party was created in Puerto Rico. And now they have 2 members promoting legislations to ban abortions. They presented more than 14 legislation in 2022. As you can imagine, we have been working very strategically with education in our communities through social media and billboards. We participate in public hearings and amplify through social media all arguments and debates, thus influencing the public discussion on the issue. We create a committee for sexual rights and reproductive justice. Also, we train abortion doulas and keep a fund to help people in Puerto Rico to end a pregnancy. But we are still vigilant right now. We have 1 legislation under review, but our legislator and senator are in recess right now. What do you want to see change to ensure pivots? We think that empathy and education is crucial. Starting conversation with your family with respect, with religious organizations, with the people in your community centers, in your street, in your household. One of the strategies that we used last year was to create billboards with different statements from family members, their doctors, their partners, and your aunties. Sensibilization and promoting critical thinking with a message is crucial. That's what made us win last year, so I recommend that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Difference between our work pre and post Dobbs. I think the biggest thing has been like a believability gap. When I say this, I mean like people initially outside of our ecosystem of repro didn't necessarily believe that Dobbs falling was a thing. But those of us who work in repro have been saying it for a while because we can see how it was leading up to that. So it's one of those things where that believability gap really changed the landscape of how people discussed and talked about abortion. Pre-Dobbs, our work felt very siloed. Like, only people who were in repro was talking about abortion access. Only people who were in repro were actually saying the word abortion. And to be honest, it was like post-Dobbs where it's like, abortion's a winning topic. No lie. So we kind of always knew abortion was a winning topic. Welcome to the party. So I feel some type of way about that. But also the good pieces that came from that was like our work became more inclusive. Coalition felt like real coalition. And when I say real coalition, it was like our work became more holistic. You realize that it was not one or the other, it was one and. So I will say that that alignment that happened post-Dobbs with our coalition and partners, especially when it came to champion abortion, was beautiful to see. I think also the most creative pivots, similar to what Yamaline was saying, was about like the billboards, the social media impact, and all of those things. Like, influencers who we had been begging to even just talk about what was happening, all of a sudden they were out there talking about abortions by themselves. We didn't even have to do that much pushing and pulling. So I don't want to take up too much space, but those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just add like the devastating impacts that I've been witnessing where independent providers are closing down, nurses and practitioners are losing their jobs. There are like people that are in states, 14 states, right, that have outright made abortion impossible to get. those states were witnessing a lot of people without the money and the resources to go get abortion care. States like, and cities like Atlanta, the abortion rates have plummeted, right? And we're watching our like emphasis on city government, our emphasis on institutions increase. The fact that power is back in the states and that states are now a place that we're focusing on is a new phenomena. Back in the day, national organizing was the thing we always funded. Funders were like, oh my God, we need like a banner to go under. Now people are like, actually local power and local organizing is the sauce that we need to invest in. And it's not glamorous, right? It's not like the photo ops that you're gonna get. It's actually the local base building that requires grit, but also a political analysis that goes beyond right and left, right? I think there's this beautiful like complexity that's happening where we're like, actually, we can't just talk about the right as the other. We actually have to incorporate the right within our political strategy to defang them and build power and trust in our communities again. I think there's a lot of mistrust happening where people do not believe that our organizations are able to get us the resources that they need. And so that means that people are having to base build differently right now. They're having to talk to their base a lot more on real terms about what's at stake here. I also just feel like a lot of creative organizing is happening around the feminists and people that are working under a Black queer reproductive justice lens, where people are actually analyzing the way that we show up to food, shelter, and housing. Food, shelter, and resourcing for basic necessities. So that radical mutual aid, the way people are fundraising, all of that became a norm now. And so these creative ways of organizing are definitely going to build stronger community relationships. But I think now the people are actually seeing the right as a topic we have to talk about regularly, not just something that we're like, yeah, they're here, they're great at what they do, we're underfunded. No, that story no longer works. Like, we have to now actually see the right as a community that we have to contend with, but also like effectively defang.
Thank you so much, Charmin. And you got my gears turning too on this building trust piece that I've been thinking about quite a bit. And I would say when Dobbs happened, there was just that automatic breach of trust, because regardless of who was in power, regardless of what was happening in the government, this happened, and suddenly so many people's rights were taken away. So us as organizers, really, it's up to building that trust again. And we can look in points of history where the government was not showing up for the people, so the people had made their own institutions, their own safe spaces, right? We can think about churches, we can think about historically Black college fraternities and sororities, like really big community building programs and organizations that were built outside of the government because the government wasn't giving them what they needed. We can think about this as a moment for that, right? Like us in the repro space, it is up to us to build that community and really like garner that trust within our advocacy groups, within our base, and truly with everyone, because this issue affects all of us. I think with that, one of our responses that I was thinking a lot about and wanted to make into a program was an abortion care basket program, because at the moment, it was like thinking through, what do our people actually need right now? And in that moment, it wasn't to get them to think about the next election. And we will, there is a moment for that. But when that happens, what they needed was care. And so we wanted to devise a program to give people the care that they needed in the moment to help build that trust and to also just show up for our community. And that was like a really, important thing that we're still building on. We're still building that trust today. We think about, too, in response to Dobbs, there was like an influx of volunteers, as is any kind of like big monumental thing that happens. A lot of folks are kind of mobilized to action. And a lot of people that we were seeing wanted to kind of like take on a care space where they wanted to like drive people to appointments or, do the role of what abortion funds do. And we kind of have to tell them, no, there's actually an infrastructure for that and their abortion funds. And if you can, you should donate to them. But what we can do is like acknowledge that this is a space that people want to be in and help direct them into programs that make sense, programs that like do show up for our community, but also like lead them into like this really like intentional in-state, in-community community like care building for the people around them. One thing that I've been seeing a lot of is like people in states where there's not access, just not knowing where to go for information. So it's on us as organizers to then be able to get that information out to people in an accessible way, making sure it's done legally, well, not legally, but like that people can't find out about it, you know? We gotta like be the stewards for the people to get them the information that they need. We have to be educators in this moment as well. And we're also thinking about like community care spaces as well. Like how are we actually like building and fostering these spaces for folks? We've partnered with like a few different RJ groups and some other like queer, inclusive, non-binary groups to like specifically help folks think about their defense and think about how they're actually like showing love and care for one another in this moment as well. So.
You know, all this talk of trust reminds me of one of my favorite phrases, which is we can only move as fast as the speed of care, right? As the speed of the way that we are caring for each other. And so I think it's just an astute point to make that this movement has to be sustainable, right? And that we have to move with our people and not against them. Yamelina, I feel like you're going to have a good answer to this question, so I would love for you to start. As a movement, what do you think we can be doing better in this moment? Do you think it's more organizing, community building, messaging? Where should we be investing resources and time?
All of the above. We work in Taller Salud, and we gather and we do focus group with different type of humans. And when you have this conversation and you respect each other, we can disagree in some stuff, but at the end, we completely agree that everyone have the right to decide for their own well-being, because you're not taking care of me, I'm taking care of me and my family. So if you respect that and you start this conversation, it's harsh, it's really an open heart conversation. When you sit down, even when it's a religious person in our community, 80% of our community is Black, living in poverty, and they're really religious. We have Protestant, we have Catholics, we have everything. But they understand that we provide a service so that we don't judge you. We're here to provide you a service that if you're in need, you're gonna have it. You're not gonna be related to the government or anybody else. We as a nonprofit, we're gonna be there for you. So it's something that it's been working for the past, we've been in Puerto Rico 43 years. In Loíza, we've been for the last 12 years. So it's communication. It's a conversation, open heart. That's my best recommendation for you guys.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on what the movement could be doing in this moment?
I think organizing funders to really think outside of the regular things that they love funding has been a challenge, because when Roe was about to fall, the believability gap that you mentioned also caused people to be like, well, how are people going to react? What are we going to do? And providers and people on the ground were like, actually, we need severance packages. We need equipment paid for. Mm-hmm. We need rent for these amazing places that people are going to go get care paid for. And those were the things that funders do not give, honestly, a damn to fund. And I'm like, why is not the most necessary thing, which is the actual resources to sustain care, not an important priority for funders? And so we really need to organize funders to change the frame of how they move money. We also need to think about yes, voting, yes, engaging with our electeds, and what about those landlords that could give up a lease for an abortion care provider? What about those people that have millions of dollars that can actually pay for the tuition of multiple people that want to become doulas and nurse care practitioners, right? I think those are the ways that we can even pressure colleges and universities to give free access to people that want to do abortion care and reproductive health care. And those avenues are all things that we can really do on a local level, engage students, engage undocumented people who are left out of, NPIC, nonprofit, industrial complex organizing, And so I just really believe that there's so many ways that people are thinking about like how to move power outside of the ballot box right now.
Alicia, what do you think we can learn from the opposition, seeing as they've been at this for many generations at this point?
Messaging comes to mind. They're out messaging us in a way that is unfathomable. I feel like sometimes us in our progressive spaces feel like it has to be this. We need more nuanced arguments. The fact that we've allowed them to weaponize religion is wild. I remember being a part of Planned Parenthood, and they actually have a sector of their organizing that focuses on this. But we need more organizations with that. Faith in Public Life is another organization that I've recently been in touch with, who are doing great work in terms of like taking back that narrative, taking back that story. As I mentioned earlier, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Georgia is Georgia. Georgia is not blue, baby, okay? Georgia is still the South. There are still places in Georgia that is very much unsafe for a person that looks like me to be in. And that's the reality of my livelihood. And so when I say that, it's still very much the Bible Belt as well. So we have to take back and know that it's not one or the other. We need more nuanced messaging that speaks to people and truly meet people where they are. I feel like we say, oh, we're meeting people where they are all the time, but like, are we really? We have a one-size-fit-all sometimes, like talking points where they haven't been edited or adjusted for exactly the people that you are truly trying to speak to. In this anti-freedom agenda that is running rampant right now, we have to take that back because freedom is ours. We are really the ones who are truly fighting for true liberation. And so we have to stand firm in what our goals are and what the ultimate goal is. So also recognizing that they've been really good at long-term planning.
Yeah.
Like, they share their playbooks. Like, they have decade-long plans and steps of how they achieve basically abolishing abortion access, and they've been good at it. So we need to do better as comrades in this fight of working together and coming together and sharing our playbooks of how do we achieve true liberation. And we see that with the legislative restrictions and the legal challenges. They're all byproducts of this. Like, I have a colleague that lives in Mississippi, and I remember her basically sending us pages of their playbook, literally their playbook of all the laws they wanted them to go in and file and see what happens. And that's how this is how it works. We need to do a better job of doing that as well, because the public opinion campaigns, they definitely matter. We need to be more of a one band, one sound, and that is what you get from them.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry.
This is no, it's good. And you were getting into the decades-long, like, whole playbook that they have. And this is going to sound a little bit left field, but I was watching a video about sororities, Panhellenic in the South, and the machine. And if you don't know what this is, it's like this whole like institutional like chokehold really of college elections, and then how the people who are winning those elections then go on to be the local judges or the attorney generals or the mayors or even have run for president. And like, even in thinking about that, it's how deep their power goes, and it's at every single level. You are seeing that like folks who are young are just being fed into like right-wing ideology, and it's persistent. So in thinking about like how much that is ingrained in every system that exists, like I think it's so important to like, one, what is our identity? And we have to like establish what an identity is to be an abortion advocate who votes for Democrats. Like there's not really one right now. And what does it look like to invest in people? How do we like get people to run for city council? How do we get them to run for a school board? How do we get them at the local level to pass policies that are good for everybody so that we can do things like take back our courts? That is just ridiculous that all of this has just really entrenched on our own ability to live our lives. So I think that like really that piece is so important.
So sometimes it can feel like our movements are constantly playing defense, much to what we were talking about. We're putting out the fires of today and unable to, as you said, take a beat and plan a proactive agenda that maybe resets the parameters of policy, right? We have to sort of reset the argument. How do each of you balance the urgency of today's fight with building towards a long-term vision and goals for the future? Yamelin, you want to go first?
Sure. As in Taller Salud, we prioritize the short term, but also we make plans for the future on a long-term basis. We know that we don't have the resource, we are a nonprofit, to handle everything at once. So we divide and conquer. We have strategically choose people in our team that works with, do some research or press releases or go and have meetings with the community leaders or go to universities or schools. And we switch and everybody is in the same, we do meetings every week to do check-ins and everybody is ready. When an opportunity comes, we're there. And it's something that it's working for us. I recommend it. It's really good, as Alicia was saying, that when everybody have the same narrative, we have coalitions, we have allies with the same, different nonprofit organizations through the island that have the same goal, like, protect our rights, and everybody's in the same boat and having the same messaging. And when we ask for a protest or a meeting or we are there. We support each other, and as our colleagues were saying, it's very important to have everybody aligned because it's the same goal for everybody, and that's what we want to win. And that's the way we do it. And we've been struggling because we have this fundamentalist party. It's brand new. We were safe, like thought we were safe, but last year was 14 legislation. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years that they have the power to legislate against human rights. So we're constantly aware and ready. We have alerts. Google alerts help us a lot. So you can have the ting ting and new legislation, but it's the way that we've been doing things, and it's working for us.
Alicia, do you want to talk?
I will say staying focused on what the ultimate vision is. The ultimate vision is honestly what reproductive justice is. And that is the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children in a safe and sustainable environment. Mm-hmm. I feel like that is the ultimate goal. And when it comes to balancing that urgency, especially those of us who live in hostile areas, is remaining committed to that vision, having long-term goals as well, while addressing those immediate needs, because we do work in a space of constant rapid response, of constant urgency, because that's the reality of our lives. Like, I have to remind people sometimes I'm on a call and they're talking about, oh, well, this state is doing this and this state cannot do X, Y, Z. I'm like, well, we have a 6-week abortion ban. So we're living in two different worlds right now, because I'm still trying to figure out if the Miffy case comes down and is not in our favor, what's our next step? And how do we prepare people around us to be able to answer that call? How do we make sure that the abortion fund, because Georgia only has one, which is ARC Southeast, Georgia only has one abortion fund. I saw some people, I was like, wait, really? Yes. And it's like, how do we prepare that abortion fund to handle the influx of cases that are soon to be coming their way? How do we support them? So those are the things that are also like very important when we're talking about rapid response and urgency. But balancing that urgency and long term requires strategic vision. We got to be adaptable. We have to collaborate, and we must take care of ourselves. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, we are truly not helping anyone. And that's where I'll stop.
Could I add on that one? Also, we do self-care days for our team. We bring social workers, psychologists. We do massage, spa days, haircuts, aromatherapy days, like every three months or so. Because it's important to, we have a slang in Spanish that said happiness and rest is revolutionary. Mm-hmm. When you work in nonprofits, it's, making the time when you don't have. And we force everybody in our staff, like it's on calendar, like a work day, and you get to, we sometimes do beach day, we go and do barbecues, afternoons, but we force because we are so committed. And sometimes you don't make time. And as we figure it, it's not like we figure it out, because it's like, it's the way you're been living and you're trying to do the good work. But if you don't force our team, it's like, it's a struggle. And at some point you're going to be burned. Yeah. And it's like, I prefer you healthy and, full blast with your energy to do the work. So it's something that also, I feel you, girl.
I will join that forced fun anytime. If you would like to invite anyone here.
We're going this way.
Yeah, exactly. We're all going there. Sometimes we learn and grow by doing. Sometimes we learn and grow through failing, through trial and error. What is a growing edge that you've experienced in this work, and what are you learning from it?
So this past January, we had an organizing and storytelling conference, and it was like the first big person convening that we've had since COVID. So not only was it our first time since COVID, like putting together a huge convening, which is like a growing pain in itself, it was also a new landscape because, Roe was no longer in place. There had been states that lost abortion access, and you could really feel it in the room that it was different than it ever had been before. And we were doing our debrief after, and folks were coming up to me and saying how like emotionally heavy things were, and we really could have used like a social worker in the room, and really like docked on all of us for not thinking about this, but now we know in the future that like we really need to invite healers into this space. We need social workers. We need folks who are able to like hold that emotional space down while we give folks the tools that they need to advocate for themselves. I actually started my master's in social work at Howard University because of this, and wanted to really bring that social work perspective to national organizing. So I think that really thinking about what your community is telling you and then doing what you can to respond to it. And my response was going to social work school is really something that's important, and really how you're going to learn and better yourself so that you can be better for your community. As far as things that we've had to really change and really lean in on, cybersecurity is a huge risk for our people. And it's always been a risk for folks, advocates who are speaking out and being vulnerable because they're sharing very personal things on a very politicized issue if they're talking about abortion. But now we're also seeing that abortion, even just searching it up online in banned states, that could put somebody at risk. So really wanting to make sure that folks know how to have a clear digital footprint when they're looking up just information. How do we get that information out to people? There's been a lot of attacks, a lot of I mean, hate crimes are going up, like up and up, and we've just seen that happen in the past few years. So I think about like how we're able to like think about getting that information to people when we're in this new landscape. I think that's something that's like really important to focus on. We think about things like digital literacy. So like digital organizing had really like, it was always important, but when COVID happened, it became the only thing that we were doing. There were people who were doing in-person organizing too, but primarily there was a lot of digital stuff. So all organizers became digital organizers. And then we also, at the same time, had to teach our volunteers how to like build that digital literacy as well. So like thinking through what does it look like to give volunteers and advocates like Canva training so that they can spread their message on their social media. How do we teach people how to use Zoom, and just making the internet more accessible for people as we move to needing to advocate more online. Also thinking about just like how we're reaching communities and empowering individuals, because we're up against some really like large and scary isms, racism, sexism, misogyny, all of these transphobia, like things that we're fighting against. And at the same time, we are fighting against abortion stigma. And for decades, like the right has used abortion stigmatizing language, but it's also been perpetuated by the left. So we have to think about like, what does it look like to sit down with yourself and decolonize the language that you're using? How do you yourself make spaces more accessible for the people that you're reaching out to? How are you building relationships with your tribal communities or with your low-income communities, and actually like making your events accessible, making your information accessible to these people? And like I've been thinking quite a lot about that as well, particularly as we're trying to engage rural folks. What does that look like on a national level? I think. Oh, yeah. So a tangible thing, too. We've wanted to, in the spirit of giving people the tools to advocate for themselves, we've developed some things like a house party toolkit so that people are able to, if in person, just invite some friends and family and just talk about abortion, have an open and candid conversation, give them the language to use to do that so that they can make their own advocacy party happen with their people, because people will believe people that they trust and love. So, you know, giving folks those tools is something that's very important and something that like I challenge myself to do every day as well. And we've also developed like talking about abortion toolkits and how to post about abortion on social media, because I think one thing too that we're seeing is a lot of folks are talking about abortion now. People that haven't been in the repro movement for as long as most people in this room have been. So then how are we like actually like thinking about the new people that are coming in and like helping to drive that narrative, like Alicia was saying, like really just like getting people bought into our story that abortion is good and normal and should be free.
That's right, girl.
Charmin, do you have thoughts?
I feel like I've been learning how to celebrate the fact that the work is happening and good people are doing the work all the time. Like an hour ago, I think the FDA just approved the first over-the-counter birth control pill, right? And I'm just like, yes, the world is burning, and yes, things are like really feeling like we're up against the wall, but like people are fighting every single day, whether it be through the courts or through like making sure that their local state legislator is funding abortions. I'm also learning about the intricacies of the way that policy is shifting and the landscape is shifting because of the like height of anti-trans bills and the attacks on gender-affirming care, as well as critical race theory bans, and just how states like Nebraska are using gender-affirming care to throw in their anti-abortion like policies and like do it in like a binder to be able to push through legislation that's really going to devastate the most oppressed in those states. So I'm just learning about like the operative side of it, but also like the ways that our even our policy work needs to be de-siloed to be able to make sure that like queer and trans young people are also at the center of reproductive health conversations, and that we are actually one coalition that is fighting for a slate of policies, not just the mistakes that we've made by taking, you know, abortion care to the states by leaving behind all our partners that are fighting for gender affirming care and like against book bans, you know? So I think that those types of like learnings have been a muscle for me. I'm like, oh wow, like I've actually never been in a room with 6 different priorities that we're all like actually engaging deeply with. Because, you know, I have been taught that like my organization fights this one mission and we're gonna do good at that and we're gonna pat ourselves on the back after. But now I'm like, oh no, this is like 7-10 year game plans that I have to like actually call a partner maybe for 30 minutes and hear their frustrations and then incorporate their feedback into my like workload. And that's been my biggest like, how do I grapple with like the levels of learning that it's gonna take for us to be good to each other, but also not leave each other behind when it comes to getting our wins.
I think that's amazing and just inspired me to add on because I'm like thinking about it too. I think like when we're thinking about like our base and folks that we want to mobilize, a lot of the time folks are like, you know, caretakers or they're trying to put food on the table, and we really have to consider their needs and what they need so that they can show up. We need to show up for them. So like my team is thinking about what does it look like to actually survey patients about the issues they care about. What is it that like they could tangibly use in the moment, and then how we can show up for them so that come time for elections or whatever it is, we have like taken care of the needs of our people. So the power of the survey, what I'm saying, is something that should be utilized.
Yes, all of that. Every single point that you both made, especially when you talked about that muscle, at the most simplistic piece for me is ask the questions. Ask the questions and learning to be to live in that space that it's okay to ask the questions because they may not know. And to be honest, some people just have titles. But they're still people. And that has been like the biggest learning curve when I first got into this movement, and even sometimes when I'm in executive spaces, because the truth of the matter is we are the subject experts. And we have to rely on ourselves and trust the knowledge that we do have. And when we don't, we have to basically collaborate with our partners in other movements, and we have to find ways to bring it all together and make it all flow and make it all make sense. But at its core, it's ask the questions, don't assume anything, because that is when situations arise when you're like, I could have stopped that. Or, you know, I could have given them better guidance, you know. So ask the questions, don't hesitate, ask them, because in my head, I'm like, this isn't connected. That's how I'm always like, this isn't connecting. And sometimes I'll do my hand like this, and then my friends who know me are like, what are you missing? I'm like, hold on, let me figure it out. So ask the questions.
So our last question before we open it up to the audience is, you know, this is difficult work. We've talked a lot about all of the ways in which you all are giving of yourselves all the time. So I would love to know, how do you each stay personally inspired and motivated to lead others in the face of all of this challenge? What brings you light and joy?
Well, first of all, remind yourself the work that you're doing and how you're impacting individuals. How are you changing the world? The wins, little emails, conversations as you were saying, that don't assume. We have community. We walk through the community, and we have people that are fundamentalists, and we start the conversation, and they didn't know how they're gonna be affected with this law changing. So when you have the conversation, they were like, "What? Okay, now I understand. Now I'm gonna support you." So do the hard work. That individual is gonna make a conversation with their family, and spread the word for you. And you only touch one. You have one conversation. Also, seek support and connection, like these spaces that you have a lot of people that works the same way as you and are connected in the narrative, and realize that you're not alone. That's something that sometimes we forgot. that in different places around the world, in the States and in Puerto Rico, we're doing the same thing, fighting for human rights and, give a hug. I'm a hugger, so anyone who wants a hug, I'm available. So, and share energy. As Charmaine was saying, spend time with like a colleague that is not going, through a good time, and listen to them, and share that you're for them. So you're there for support them. So it's good to have someone to back you up sometimes, and to be out loud and say it to you, because sometimes we keep things to to ourselves, and it's part of the process, but we need to, let it out, because everybody's in the same space here, and we have each other back. So that's how I do it.
Staying inspired. I have a gratitude jar. This is something that I've just recently started because I'm slightly a perfectionist. Like, someone could come to something and they'll be like, "Oh, this was amazing," and in my head I'm like, "But the screen didn't change." like I didn't like that color. It wasn't perfect. Like, it's one little thing that I may harp on. So I have to practice like living in that space of like, you did this. Like, take joy in your small victories is so important. And having that community of people who basically know you and know the work that you do is very important as well. Also, compartmentalizing. Like, sometimes you honestly got to do it. Compartmentalizing isn't necessarily a bad thing. I compartmentalize my work and my life. And I've just gotten better at this at 35 years old. Like, I just got to name that. Like, and I know it's easier for me to say that, but the sooner you learn it, the better it will be for you. Because the work that we do, it is demanding physically and mentally. And it's draining at times. So we have to take back our joy. We also believe in joy as a form of liberation. So you have to like stay grounded in that. And what was that last part, Kristen?
Just what was bringing you joy?
All things related to Beyonce is bringing me light and joy. All my Beehive members in here. So yeah, that is bringing me light and joy. And anytime I can be near a body of water, maybe it's the Pisces in me, I'm happy.
Yes. I love that for you. Did you make it to the concert?
Not yet.
Okay. I think so. I love the fact that, sometimes there's this narrative that like there hasn't been a long-term arc or long-term planning, which, I actually think that three things that have made me feel like that's already been done, or there's something to work off of, are the just transition framework that Grassroots Global Justice has worked on, Movement for Black Lives' policy agenda, as well as People's Actions policy agenda. So those three, I think I'm like, oh, great. This is like a framework that I'm just going to take and like politically study with my team, and we adopt those platforms. So then we don't have this question about like, what is our long-term arc? I actually feel like a lot of people have done that thinking, and I'm like, great, we could use this, build off of it. And so I really engage in like deep political study with my team, and that's been like the way that we reconnect with the human parts of ourselves, because sometimes it feels like we have to have all these theoretical answers, but I'm like, dude, like Nina Simone used to like smoke a cigarette and read Marx and sing. Like, to me, I'm like, why can't I just bring it back to like the ways that my political self is actually engaging with the world in like, what seems like very like melancholy like ways of just like experiencing life every day, So I really just like have been reading and sitting there on my porch, maybe smoking something else, and just being like, to me, this is a political life. Like, like sitting, reading, and listening to good revolutionary music.
Yeah, I love it.
I can see the image now. I'm like, I see the vision. I think for me, because activist burnout it's so real, and I think all of us are feeling it right now. And then we'll feel good once we leave Netroots, and then we'll feel it again in like a week. And that's just the reality of it. I I find joy when I am in like large coalition spaces like this. And one instance I can think of is there was a Poor People's Campaign whole rally and march that happened. And it was so beautiful because you saw folks talking about the intersections of poverty with reproductive health care and rights, with climate, with immigration, labor, like all of these different issues. And you could see like the one thing that had connected all of these people. And like when you looked out in the crowd, you all knew that you cared about this thing. And because you care about it, you care about everyone there. And that to me is really beautiful. So I love to sit in the moments where I know that even if my community seems small, it's actually not. And it makes me excited that there's a lot bigger ways I can connect with people. And what gets me down is like the large like policy macro things that we're seeing every single day. But what makes me like much happier to think about is on the individual scale. When I'm talking to somebody one-on-one, the impact that whatever that conversation is makes. There was one person I worked with, and she told me after I had done this whole storytelling thing with her, like, I am changing my career to be in organizing. And like that to me was so beautiful. I had worked with somebody else who said, like after I had an op-ed published with her story, she said, I'm going to use this to tell my mom about my abortion. Just these beautiful, beautiful moments, times where I could help somebody get an abortion. Like those like human connections is really the only thing that keeps me going, because like we're seeing attacks every single day, but to know that you yourself are here, you're worth it, you're important, and you are changing lives, and you can sit there in that's my joy. That in music, you know?
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have a few minutes for questions if anybody would like to ask. So just stand up, hopefully state your name, and then with your loudest speaking voice, ask a question. We have been so comprehensive. There we go. I'm just going to restate the question for our friends that are watching on the live stream. There are a number of states that are introducing other kinds of legislation around birth control and other reproductive health and technology. Are there concerns, or does anyone on the panel have thoughts about, in particular, the right to birth control legislation and its impacts on abortion access?
Yeah, you can pass legislation that is going to allow anybody at the, as young as a teenager to be able to access birth control. But what I'm noticing on the ground is that there are so many people who do not think birth control is a viable option for them, and the reasons range from misinformation about hormones and what it does to your weight and what it does to your body, to the actual beliefs that birth control is bad for you in the long term if you want to have a kid. So those types of campaigns actually require deep-seated work that actually goes beyond our ability to provide this thing. Because in states like New York and California, anybody above the age of 14, 15 can actually get access right away without their parents even knowing, right? But yet, we still see a huge number of young people of what they call reproductive age. That's a weird term, right? That are denying to that care. So for me, it was a conundrum. I was just like, what do we do when we are facing this onslaught of attacks for the actual like abortion procedure, but then we have millions of people that are just like, yeah, that's not for me. Like, I do not want to get fat. We have to address fat phobia. I do not want these like hormonal issues. We have to address the disinformation around hormones. So yeah, it's a really, really big project that requires us to actually like do deep political education.
Any other thoughts?
Oh, I see people looking at me. Well, perfect example. The past election, our governor actually did not deny that he wouldn't ban birth control, specifically Plan B, and it came up. The best part about that was that we just did a poll on birth control and how did Georgians feel, and it was overwhelmingly like 80 something percent of Georgians felt like birth control should be available to everyone who wants it. So that was an immediate talking point that we were able to put out and turn into some visuals and some social campaigns like to attack him basically on that, and to let people know that birth control is also on the table in terms of like their attacks and what they're trying to do. So I will definitely say that in a state, especially like Georgia, it is something that they are toying with, but they're afraid. Like we said earlier, abortion is a winning topic. People want the ability to decide what to do and when to start a family. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, right in the back in the purple shirt.
Sexual beings, and there are those we often don't think in terms of wanting to have abortions, and then there are those who are sexually abused, and they're stuck. And and also, the thing is that, very often, they're, they're stuck in terms of not being allowed to the right to have an abortion.
Yeah.
And, they're forced to go through very painful fucking labor. And that's not right.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just going to try to repeat your question. No, it's okay for the folks on the live stream that maybe couldn't hear you. Does anyone have thoughts on ways that we can stand in solidarity or be in solidarity?
Brought out of the closet, they're forced to be in a damn closet. It's not okay.
Yeah, we can be in solidarity with folks who are who have disabilities, who are trying to access abortion care services, and the ways in which bans in particular are impacting that community.
In Puerto Rico, we don't have like that issue. We have a case that it was last year that this person was in a coma. He wasn't aware of their surroundings and have a situation. She got pregnant, and the government, the Department of Justice did the work, and it happens that, they found out the person who was working in the hospital, so they take care of the situation. In our, in our ways of doing things in Puerto Rico, we're covered. We support our fellows, with the limitations of they don't have the knowledge to defend themselves. But the Justice Department, thank God, for something, it's worth it to have them, and they support our communities too. So I don't know if in the States, but I hope it's, they work the same.
Well, that is the end of our time. I just want to take this time to thank each of you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and for being here, and everyone for attending the session. Hopefully you got something out of it. Thank you.
Thank you.